Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the scratchy-will habit of a 9th-century Benedictine monk. No Netflix, no espresso, just you, a stone floor, and the kind of cold that seeps into your bones like a nosy neighbor. Picture this, it's 2 a.m. in northern France, and your breath hangs in the air like a ghost who just won't quit. Somewhere in the darkness, a bell tolls, jolting you awake with all the subtlety of a drunkard knocking over a suit of armor. Your sandaled feet hit icy flagstones, and oh, there's the medieval equivalent of stepping on a Lego. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. Let's see who's drifting off in Tokyo versus Toledo. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle toward the chapel, guided by the flicker of tallow candles that smell like a cross between burnt bacon and existential dread. The rule of Saint Benedict, that's your new boss, demands 8 prayer shifts a day, and this one's the real party starter: vigils. Historians still argue whether these sleep interruptions were holy discipline or collective insanity, but here's the kicker: miss a prayer, and you're scrubbing latrines with a twig broom for a week. Monks called it penance. You'd call it a Yelp review waiting to happen. Your stomach growls. Dinner was 6 hours ago, a hearty meal of stale bread and regret. No snacks until sunrise, because apparently, hunger builds character and also hallucinations. As you chant psalms in Latin, a language you butcher like a medieval chef hacking at mutton, you notice Brother Gerald snoring softly against a pillar. Rookie mistake. The abbot's cane thwacks the floor, and suddenly Gerald's wide awake, inventing a new dance move: the repentance shimmy. Here's the thing, waking up on time isn't just a spiritual flex. It's survival. Without alarms, monasteries risked chaos. Imagine a Walmart Black Friday, but with more Gregorian chanting. So how did they solve it? Well, let's just say their first attempts involved water, candles, and a lot of spilled wax. But we'll get to that after you survive Compline. You're not just praying 8 times a day. You're living inside a celestial Excel spreadsheet. The divine office isn't a suggestion, it's a grid, ironclad and unyielding, slicing your life into bite-sized chunks of devotion. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline, Latin names that taste like chalk dust on your tongue. Each hour has its own psalms, its own rituals, its own way of making your knees ache like you've been binge-watching a jousting tournament. Let's break down the math, shall we? Nighttime vigils at 2 a.m., check. Dawn lauds as the rooster coughs itself awake. Got it. Then prime at 6 a.m., when even the mice are side-eyeing your life choices. By the time you hit sext at noon, you've already prayed more times than a modern influencer says, like and subscribe. Historians still argue whether this schedule was divinely inspired or just medieval micromanagement run amok. But here's the quirky bit. Monks tracked these hours using scratch-and-sniff calendars. Well, sort of. They marked prayer times by burning specific herbs, rosemary for dawn, myrrh for dusk, so even the illiterate could tell time by sniffing the air. Take that, Apple Watch. Your day revolves around bells. Big bells, small bells, bells that sound like gargling angels. Every task, eating, reading, even bathroom breaks, is dictated by their clangor. Forget quiet time. The closest you get to silence is the 47 seconds between Vespers and Compline when Brother Felix forgets to ring the tower bell. Modern life has rush hour. Medieval monks had prayer hour, a relentless merry-go-round of genuflections. You start fantasizing about the sweet release of a power outage. Here's the kicker: this schedule wasn't just spiritual. It was survival. Without strict timekeeping, monasteries risked descending into what one 10th-century abbot called a circus of sloth. Imagine 50 sleep-deprived men arguing over whether it's time for terce or dinner, all while secretly hoarding communion wine. The rule of Saint Benedict even mandated how you walk between prayers: hands tucked into sleeves, eyes downcast, moving with the urgency of a snail carrying a mortgage. And yet, there's a loophole. During winter, when nights stretch longer than a bad sermon, the monks invented temporary hours. Basically, they cheated. Fewer psalms, shorter prayers, and a collective agreement to pretend the sun hadn't fully risen yet. It's the medieval version of snoozing your alarm. By your third day, you're hallucinating bells in the clatter of spoons. Your sandals were grooves in the cloister stones, tracing a path worn smooth by centuries of obedient feet. You begin to understand why one monk's diary simply reads, Tuesday, Psalm 119, stewed leeks, existential void. But hold on, what's that sound? A new bell? No, just your stomach. Dinner's at 3 p.m., and it's, oh, boiled barley again. Bon appetit. Your hands cramp around a quill that's seen better days, like, centuries better. You're a scribe now, copying Psalm 23 for the 87th time this month, and let's just say your handwriting's devolving into something resembling chicken scratches on amphetamines. The scriptorium smells of ink, ferrous, tangy, parchment, sheep despair, and the distinct musk of men who've forgotten sunlight exists. Your job. Transcribe. Translate. Don't sneeze near the vellum. Chronic fatigue isn't a side effect here, it's the whole vibe. Monastic scribes worked 8-hour shifts, but hours were flexible, like a yoga instructor who's also a tax collector. You're copying Aristotle's metaphysics by candlelight, squinting at Greek letters that wobble like drunk centipedes. Historians still argue whether medieval scribes invented coffee stains, but here's a mainstream fact. Monasteries preserved 90% of classical texts. The quirky tidbit? Half those manuscripts contain doodles of grumpy monks riding snails. Scholars call it marginalia. You call it a cry for help. Your eyelids droop. The candle gutters. Suddenly, you're transcribing Holy Ghost as Holy Goat, and honestly, the imagery works. A 12th century scribe in Cluny actually drew a goat wearing a papal tiara mid-sentence. Was it heresy? Sleep deprivation? Performance art? We'll never know. What we do know, fatigue bred innovation. Enter the first alarm clocks, not to wake monks for prayer, but to jolt scribes awake before they turned Genesis into a recipe for turnip stew. Here's the debate. Did sleep deprivation spark timekeeping, or was timekeeping just a band-aid on a festering wound of exhaustion? Some argue monks prioritized precision to avoid eternal damnation. Others think they just really hated scrubbing ink off their sandals. Either way, the scribe's life was a treadmill of yawns. You're told to offer your labor to God, but right now, you'd trade your soul for a hammock. The abbot strolls by, eyeing your work. Brother, he murmurs, is that a swear word in Aramaic? You glance down. Oh, that's just your attempt at a lowercase e. Time for another invention. The eraser. Except they won't invent that for another 500 years, so you spit on your sleeve and scrub until the parchment's thinner than your patience. Across the room, Brother Allyn face plants into his manuscript. The sound, a whump of cheek on parchment, startles a mouse chewing on Cicero. This is your life, a never-ending loop of copying, correcting, and questioning why Noah didn't leave the mosquitoes behind. But hey, at least you're not the guy in charge of waking everyone up. Wait. Or are you? You step into the cloister courtyard, shivering as your breath fogs the air like a dragon with a nicotine habit. Above you, the sky's the color of porridge left out since Advent. The sundial at the garden's center stands smug and useless, its shadow huddled around the base like a dog avoiding rain. Winter in medieval Europe isn't just cold, it's personally offended by punctuality. Sundials, those sunny divas of ancient timekeeping, thrive in Mediterranean climates where the sky's always Instagram filter perfect. But here. By November, daylight lasts roughly as long as a peasant's patience for tax collectors. You squint at the bronze gnomon, willing it to move. Nothing. Even the sun's on strike, buried under clouds thicker than abbey stew. Monks resorted to chanting hymns to loosen the heavens, which worked as well as you'd expect. See, not at all. Enter the water clock, clepsydra if you're fancy, leaky bucket if you're honest. The concept's simple. Water drips from one vessel to another, marking hours by volume. Romans used them to time courtroom speeches. Byzantines jazzed them up with gears and bells. But here's the quirky twist. Monastic water clocks doubled as alarm systems. A float would rise with the water, tugging a string that clanged a bell. In theory. In reality, winter turns these gadgets into ice sculptures. You're staring at one now, a frozen cascade mid-drip, like God pressed pause on a waterfall. The monk in charge of thawing it, Brother Theodoric, is muttering curses under his breath, a hail Satan of frostbite. Last week, the mechanism froze during matins, and half the monks slept through prime. The abbot's solution? Assign someone to pee on the clock every hour. Spoiler: it didn't help. Historians still argue whether water clocks were ever practical north of the Alps. Mainstream fact: Charlemagne owned a fancy clepsydra gifted by Caliph Harun al-Rashid. Quirky tidbit: Theodoric's predecessor tried mixing wine into the water to lower its freezing point. Result: a sticky, fermented mess and the most cheerful vigils on record. You crouch to chip ice off the basin, your fingers numb as a bishop's conscience. Somewhere, an ancient Greek engineer is laughing. Timekeeping here isn't just flawed, it's a slapstick routine. The sundial mocks you. The water clock weeps silently. And Brother Theodoric? He's now attempting to light a fire under the frozen mechanism, which, let's be real, is how monasteries actually burned down. But wait. Is that dripping? The ice cracks, a single drop plinking into the basin. The monks cheer. For exactly 47 seconds, time marches on. Then it freezes again. You're about to witness the birth of the alarm clock, a contraption so janky, it makes IKEA furniture look like divine revelation. Meet the aqua horologium, the monastery's answer to chronic oversleeping. Picture a wooden bucket with a hole the size of a sinner's guilt. Water drips in, a float rises, and voila, a string tugs a bell. Simple. Elegant. Completely deranged. It's 3 a.m. in the 10th century, and Brother Gerbert is testing version 1.0. The bucket gurgles like a happy toddler. The float bobs. The bell does nothing. Gerbert pokes it. Drip. 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 Suddenly, the string snaps, the bell plummets, and the ensuing clang startles a novice into falling out of the loft. Historians still argue whether this counts as success. Mainstream fact: the earliest water alarms date to ancient Greece. Quirky tidbit: monks added honey to slow the flow. Turns out, ants love theological innovation. You're on leak patrol tonight, armed with a rag and a prayer. The device weeps water like a melodramatic saint, pooling around your sandals. Across the room, Brother Egbert snores through the chaos, proving some men could sleep through the apocalypse if it came with a lullaby. The abbot insists this is progress, but you've seen livelier corpses. Here's the real issue: noise. When the bell does work, it's louder than a gargoyle with a megaphone. Monks bolt upright, hearts pounding, convinced Judgment Day's arrived. One chronicle describes a bell so shrill, it scared wolves off a nearby hill. Another mentions a novice who rang it accidentally and was sentenced to copy Psalms, in Greek. Scholars debate whether these alarms improved punctuality or just PTSD. Some claim they cut late arrivals by half. Others note a spike in mysterious bucket vandalism. Then there's Brother Aldrich's solution: stuffing the bell with wool to muffle it. The abbot confiscated his wool, citing excessive cleverness. By dawn, you're soaked, exhausted, and 90% sure the device is possessed. The float's stuck. The strings tangled. And the bell? Now it just giggles when struck. As you slump against a pillar, you wonder, is time itself mocking us? Probably. Winter isn't just a season here, it's a personal vendetta. The monastery's water clock now resembles a glass-blowing project gone wrong, its pipes frozen into twisted sculptures. Brother Theodoric, patron saint of bad ideas, is heating an iron rod in the hearth. We'll thaw it strategically, he declares, waving the glowing tip like a wizard's wand. You back away slowly. Medieval Europe's cold snaps didn't just ruin crops, they turned timekeeping into a sitcom. Water clocks, those delicate southern darlings, wilted under frost like nobles in a peasant revolt. Monks tried everything: insulating pipes with cow dung, flammable, wrapping them in wool, stolen by rats, even chanting psalms to the pipes, ineffective, but Grammy-worthy. Historians still argue whether these efforts were valiant or vaudevillian. Mainstream fact: the 12th century Chronicle of St. Gall records a monk who accidentally set his robe on fire while thawing a clepsydra. Quirky tidbit. Some abbeys hired ice wardens to lick pipes and keep water flowing. Spoiler: they quit. You're tasked with hauling buckets of hot water from the kitchen, a 20-minute trek across a courtyard slicker than a bishop's promises. By the third trip, your hands are blistered, your robe steaming, and you've baptized 3 snowdrifts with curses. The water clock gurgles to life momentarily, then freezes again, mocking you with a plink of ice. Theodoric's iron rod slips, melting a hole in the pipe. Now it's not just broken, it's modern art. Here's the kicker: monasteries weren't alone. Persian engineers built underground icehouses, Arab scholars used mercury in cold climates, but European monks? They doubled down on hope and hubris. A 10th century sketch from Reichenau Abbey shows a water clock hooked to a brazier, essentially a pipe sauna. Did it work? Let's just say the only thing it heated was the abbot's temper when the roof caught fire. By midnight, the cloister's a chaos of sloshing buckets and shivering novices. Brother Arnulf suggests relocating to Italy. The abbot responds by assigning him to copy Augustine's Confessions in iambic pentameter. Desperation breeds creativity. Someone rigs a drip system using fermented cider, lower freezing point. It works, until the monks start drinking the cider. As you collapse onto your straw mattress, you hear the faint drip 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 of progress. Or maybe it's roof leaks. Either way, tomorrow brings a new solution: candles. How hard could that be? You're now the proud custodian of a candle that's taller than your patience. This isn't just wax and wick, it's a timekeeping device, meticulously marked with lines that supposedly measure hours. It's foolproof, claims Brother Bertrand, who's never met a fool. The plan: burn the candle between each notch, and when it hits the embedded bell, ding. Instant alarm. What could go wrong? Let's start with the obvious. Candles are terrible at consistency. A breeze sneezes through the cloister, and suddenly your hour lasts 20 minutes. A draft. Congratulations, you've time-traveled to next Tuesday. Monks solved this by building elaborate tin shields around candles, turning them into miniature fortresses. Historians still argue whether these were timekeeping tools or the world's saddest dollhouses. Mainstream fact: Alfred the Great used candle clocks to divide his day into equal chunks. Quirky tidbit. Some monks added spices to the wax, cinnamon for lauds, thyme for vespers, so time smelled like progress. You're on candle watch duty, staring at the flame like it owes you money. The bell, nestled in wax at the third notch, gleams with misplaced optimism. Across the scriptorium, Brother Luke scribbles notes by its light, his quill moving faster than a pardoner fleeing a plagued town. The candle drips. The bell sinks. The flame flickers just as a mouse skitters past, casting a shadow that makes you jump. Was that the bell? Nope. Just your dignity leaving the chat. Here's the debate: were candle clocks actually useful, or just an excuse to burn through the monastery's beeswax surplus? Some scholars point to intricate candle recipes, beeswax mixed with deer tallow for slower burns. Others note that most monastic records complain about candles constantly. Brother Etienne's diary entry for 1123 reads, "Third candle failed. Vigils delayed. God is testing me." Or maybe the chandler. Then comes the innovation, embedding not just bells, but coins in the wax. When the flame melts the right layer, the coin drops onto a metal plate. Clink. Instant alarm. Sounds genius, right? Until the coin gets stuck, the wax tunnels sideways, and the whole thing melts into a puddle of wasted hope. One manuscript illustration shows a monk weeping over a candle that's pooled around his sandal. Caption: Tempus fugit. Time flies. So do tempers. By midnight, you've mastered the art of staring time into submission. The candle's halfway to the bell, and you're halfway to a nervous breakdown. Brother Bertrand returns, takes one look at the lopsided wax disaster, and mutters, "Perhaps gears would be better." Gears. Right. What's next? Mechanical badgers tapping on windows. You're elbow deep in grease and regret, staring at a tangle of gears that look like Satan's pocket watch. Brother Gerbert, part monk, part mad inventor, grins like he's just discovered fire. Again. Behold, he says, gesturing to a contraption of iron and ambition, the future of punctuality. You half expect it to sprout wings and fly. Or explode. Mechanical clocks. The concept's ancient. China had water-driven gears, Byzantium had celestial models, but here in chilly 12th century Europe, monks are MacGyvering their own versions between prayer shifts. The mainstream fact. Salisbury Cathedral's 14th century clock is considered the oldest surviving mechanical example. The quirky tidbit? Early monastic prototypes used prayer beads as gear prototypes. Spoiler, they shattered faster than a novice's vow of silence. Gerbert's device ticks like a metronome on espresso. Each gear is hand-forged, each tooth filed with the precision of a scribe copying the Book of Kells. The mainspring, a strip of hammered boar leather, twists tighter than your grip on sanity. Historians still argue whether these gears were inspired by Islamic water clocks or just a happy accident born of too much mead and too little sunlight. Either way, it's a mess. A beautiful, clanking mess. You're tasked with winding it. The handle resists, creaking like a haunted ship. Gently. Gerbert barks, as if gentleness exists in a world where vigils happen at 2 a.m. The gears engage with a clunk, and suddenly, a wooden angel spins, ringing a tiny bell. It's adorable. It's absurd. It's working? Until it isn't. The angel jams mid-spin, limbs contorted into a pose that screams, "Why me, Lord?" Gerbert whacks the frame with a mallet. The angel dislodges, but now the bell tolls non-stop, a metallic shriek summoning monks from their beds. "Attack!" someone yells. The Danes are back. Chaos erupts, sandals slapping stone, saltires wielded as weapons. All while Gerbert's creation rings on, the mechanical equivalent of a toddler with a drum. Here's the kicker. These early clocks weren't built for accuracy. A good one lost or gained 15 minutes a day. Monks didn't care, they just needed something louder than a snoring abbot. By dawn, the entire monastery is awake, cranky, and deeply suspicious of Gerbert's next project, rumored to involve a squirrel wheel. As you retreat to the scriptorium, a single thought loops in your sleep-deprived brain. We're one step closer to snooze buttons. Brother Adelard's beard has its own ecosystem. Twigs, wax, a suspicious hazelnut, and right now, it's trembling with the fervor of a man who's just discovered the perfect gear ratio. You find him hunched over a workbench, muttering to a pile of springs like they're old friends. His workshop. A shrine to failure. Shelves sag under the weight of half-baked alarms, a bellows-powered clapper, a hamster wheel, hamster not included, and something involving a terrified chicken. For 2 decades, Adelard's tweaked, cursed, and prayed over these contraptions. His journal reads like a tragic epic. Year 14, Day 32. Tried goose quill trigger. Lauds occurred at Sext. Abbé furious. Praise God. Mainstream fact. Adelard's tinkering mirrored the broader shift from water to mechanical timekeeping. Quirky tidbit. He once replaced a bell with a hollowed-out gourd to soften the divine wrath of dawn. It rotted within a week. You're handed a screwdriver, a flattened spoon, really, and ordered to hold a gear in place. Adelard's breath smells of turnips and determination. "Steady, steady," he hisses, as the gear slips, shearing a chunk off your thumbnail. "Ah. A minor setback," he declares, which is Adelard speak for Tuesday. Historians still argue whether he was a genius or just the monastery's most persistent hoarder. Here's the debate. Did his obsession advance clockmaking, or was he just really bad at quitting? Some point to his regulated escapement, a fancy term for a stick that pokes gears rhythmically. Others note that 90% of his inventions exploded. Take the solar noon detector, a lens and rope system that lit the abbot's robe on fire. Twice. By midnight, you've bled on 3 projects and baptized a gear with your tears. Adelard, though, is euphoric. His latest contraption, a copper hammer striking a cowbell, actually works. Once. Then the hammer flies off, embedding itself in the refectory door. "Progress," he beams, jotting notes on a parchment already stained with holy water and what you hope is berry juice. As you flee, you spot the abbot eyeing Adelard's workshop with a mix of awe and terror. Tomorrow, they'll install his masterpiece in the bell tower. Next week, it'll fail spectacularly. But Adelard? He'll already be sketching a new idea, this time, with pulleys. You're trudging down a mud-slick road that's less road and more suggestion, clutching a wooden crate to your chest like it contains the last dry sock in Christendom. Inside, Brother Adelard's latest alarm clock, a spiked iron monstrosity that ticks like a woodpecker with a grudge. Your mission, deliver it to Cluny Abbey, where monks are reportedly still waking each other by throwing turnips at snorers. Medieval monasteries didn't have LinkedIn, but they had something better, a grapevine of gossip, pilgrimage routes, and bishops with big mouths. When one abbey nailed alarm tech, others heard faster than you could say, heresy trial. Mainstream fact, the Benedictine order's centralized structure let innovation spread like butter on warm bread, a luxury you haven't tasted since Lent. Quirky tidbit. Some abbeys sent coded horological tips in psalm margins. The Lord is my shepherd. Also, try brass gears on page 42. Your sandals suction through muck as you dodge a merchant cart hauling live geese. The crate groans. The clock inside emits a clank that scares a nearby squirrel into asceticism. Historians still argue whether clock diffusion was brotherly love or one-upmanship. Cluny's abbot once bragged his bells rang so sweetly, angels took notes. Your abbot responded by commissioning a clock that played Dies Irae on a loop. At sunset, you reach Clairvaux Abbey, a way station of weary pilgrims and suspicious ale. The guest master eyes your crate. Another infernal contraption, he sighs, rubbing a scar from last year's candle clock fiasco. You demonstrate Adelard's masterpiece. The alarm triggers, launching a cog across the room that beans a novice in the forehead. Marvelous! The guest master deadpants. We'll use it to scare off Vikings. By week's end, you're at Cluny's gates. The abbot inspects the clock, unimpressed. We've already installed a water-wheel-driven chime, he sniffs, pointing to a tower where monks are literally reinventing the wheel. But as Vespers approaches, Cluny's bells stutter silent, the wheels jammed with pilgrim donations, mostly rotten figs. Your clock's installed as backup. That night, its metallic dong startles the abbot into spilling his wine. Revolutionary, he grumbles, dabbing at his robe. Returning home, you pass 3 abbeys now sporting Adelardesque alarms. One has added goat-powered gears. Another's bells ring in hexameter. The third. A monk waves cheerfully, his alarm now repurposed to churn butter. Progress is messy. But as you collapse into your straw bed, you realize, the night's no longer silent. Across Europe, monasteries clang in discordant harmony, a cacophony of punctuality. You're knee-deep in mud that smells like wet dog and yesterday's cabbage, swinging a hoe at weeds with the enthusiasm of a man who's just discovered his breakfast bread has weevils again. Beyond the monastery walls, the world runs on sun, soil, and the stubbornness of turnips, until today. Because now, the cloister bells dictate your life too. Clang, time to sow. Bong, time to pray. Ding-dong, time to question all your life choices. Turns out, farmers weren't just borrowing plows from monks, they borrowed time. When abbey bells began ringing at fixed intervals, villagers synced their rhythms to the sound. Mainstream fact, medieval crop yields improved by 15% in regions near monasteries, thanks to disciplined planting schedules. Quirky tidbit. Some farmers insisted certain barley strains grew faster if sown during the Pater Noster bell. Spoiler, they didn't. But the placebo effect was strong. Your back aches, your tunic's a canvas of sweat and suspicious stains, but there it is, Vespers bell. You drop the hoe like it's cursed and shuffle toward the chapel. Beside you, Gunta the blacksmith mutters. Used to nap at noon. Now I nap at none. Progress. Historians still argue whether this regimentation empowered farmers or just gave abbots more control. Either way, you're living on monk-o'clock, where even your bladder obeys the bells. The system's not perfect. Yesterday, a fog muffled the bells, and old widow Marta planted peas 2 hours early. Now she's blaming the devil's drizzle for her stunted crop. Meanwhile, young Klaus sneaks into the fields at Complin, convinced moonlit carrots taste sweeter. They don't. But they do attract more rabbits. Here's the kicker. Monks didn't just export alarms, they monetized them. Need your fields blessed at prime? That'll cost 3 chickens and a promise to stop flirting with the miller's daughter. By Lent, the abbey's coffer jingles louder than the bells. Yet you can't deny the perks. Your wheat's neater, your back's breaker, and you've mastered the art of sprinting home before the final bell traps you in compulsory vespers. As dusk stains the sky, you lean on your shovel, watching the monastery's shadow stretch across the fields like a sundial made of spite. Somewhere, a monk is winding a clock. Somewhere, a carrot mocks Klaus. And you're just trying to remember what silence sounds like. Your eyelids weigh more than the abbey's collection plate, but sleep? That's a negotiation. Between vigils and lauds, you've got 23 minutes for a nap, medieval snooze science at its finest. The Benedictine rule permits merciful rest, which here means you can slump against a pillar if you don't drool on the relics. Mainstream fact: monks were allotted 4 to 6 hours of sleep nightly, broken into shifts. Quirky tidbit. Some abbeys designated snore monitors to jab offenders with a broom handle. Promotion criteria: light sleeper, lighter conscience. You've mastered the art of micronaps, a skill that would make modern CEOs weep. The cloister's stone floor is your mattress, your hood a makeshift pillow that smells faintly of last week's fish stew. Strategic dozing isn't laziness, it's survival. Historians still argue whether these fragmented rests boosted productivity or just turned monks into walking parchment ghosts. One 13th century chronicle praises a brother who could sleep standing like a stork, yet wake chanting psalms. You, meanwhile, faceplant into your soup bowl during sext. The best nap spot? The scriptorium's southwest corner, where sunlight pools like liquid gold at noon. You're not alone. Brother Lucian snores softly over a half-copied gospel, ink smudging his cheek into a temporary tattoo of piety. The abbot pretends not to notice. Rule of thumb: if you're holding a quill, it counts as work. Here's the debate. Were these naps a spiritual discipline or a biological necessity? Some scholars claim monks harnessed vigilant rest to heighten prayer focus. Others cite records of brothers sleepwalking into the latrine. One diary entry from Cluny reads, "Dreamt I was chased by a giant alarm clock. Woke to find it was matins." You've developed a system. 7 minutes of shut-eye during the abbot's post-Complin lecture on humility. He's been giving the same talk since 1127. Even the mice nap. But today, disaster. You oversleep prime, jolting awake to find your hood sewn to the cloister tapestry. Brother Florian smirks, needle in hand. Penance. Copying job, while balancing on one foot. As you drift off again, strategically, during terce, a thought flickers. What if we napped in shifts? Revolutionary. Heretical. Brilliant. But the bell tolls, and you're up, shuffling toward vespers with the gait of a man who's 10% soul, 90% caffeine-free survival instinct. You're in a Song Dynasty study hall where the air hums with sandalwood and ambition. No clanging bells here, just the delicate crinkle of an incense coil smoldering on jade tiles. Each spiral is time-made aromatic, releasing not just smoke but minutes, measured in plum blossom and musk. While European monks wrestle frozen gears, Chinese scholars let their hours drift by in fragrant haze. Poetic. Absolutely. Flawless? Ask the intern who just sneezed ash all over the imperial tax records. Chinese incense clocks are the divas of timekeeping, elegant, precise, and high maintenance. A single coil burns for 12 hours, its smoke tracing calligraphic spirals in the air. Mainstream fact: these clocks doubled as air fresheners for elite bureaucrats. Quirky tidbit. Some coils had embedded weights that'd plink into bronze bowls, alarm clocks for poets. But humidity. A death sentence. One summer storm, and your incense sags like a noodle in broth, turning a 3 p.m. meeting into a 9 p.m. guessing game. Your hand hovers over a coil marked Hour of the Dragon, its tip glowing like a lazy firefly. Across the room, Magistrately naps at his desk, confident the lavender-scented ash won't reach his lunchbox for hours. Historians still argue whether Marco Polo smuggled incense clock ideas back to Europe or if monks just copied the concept and called it divine inspiration. Either way, imagine Brother Adelard's jealousy. They tell time with perfume? We're out here licking frozen pipes. But elegance has pitfalls. A 12th century magistrate's memoir recounts an incense clock laced with awakening herbs, reed, chili powder, to rouse napping clerks. Result: a sneezing fit so violent, it toppled a inkstone shelf. Another scholar tried embedding fireworks for alarms, festive, until his desk became the Mid-Autumn Festival's opening act. Yet here's the rub: while monks fought frost, scholars battled beetles. Incense attracted powder post bugs that munched coils into Swiss cheese. Your coil sputters, a beetle carcass wedged in the groove. Time stretches. Magistrately drools onto a scroll. Outside, a water clock drips with smug reliability. You sigh. Turns out, whether in Sienne or Cluny, time laughs hardest at those who try to tame it. Your thumb hovers over the smartphone screen, its glow casting a lunar pallor on your face. One tap, and you've set an alarm with the ease of a saint pardoning sins. No gears, no frozen pipes, just the cold logic of silicon. But let's not kid ourselves, you're still battling the same primal foe those monks faced. Wakefulness. The battlefield's just swapped wool habits for TikTok pajamas. The journey from monastery gears to Apple Watches is less progress and more desperate improv. Mainstream fact: the first mechanical clocks birthed the 24-hour day, standardizing time for the Industrial Revolution's factory whistles. Quirky tidbit: early pocket watches had one hand, minutes were for overachievers. Monks would have loved that. None o'clock? Let's call it 3 p.m. and nap. You're scrolling through alarm tones, Tibetan bowls, rooster crow, dubstep sunrise. Brother Adelard's ghost weeps with envy. Remember his chicken-powered alarm? Now you've got apps that track REM cycles and simulate dawn with LED lights. Historians still argue whether we've mastered time or become its anxious minions. Some claim alarms democratized productivity. Others note that 73% of millennials hit snooze until their phones fling themselves off nightstands. Let's talk snooze buttons, the indulgences of modernity. Medieval monks got one bell. 9 minutes of delusional bargaining. I'll skip breakfast. Shower at work. Live in a coffee for drip. The problem's ancient, but the stakes have evolved. Miss vigils? Eternal damnation. Miss your Zoom meeting? Marginal damnation. Yet here's the twist: even Silicon Valley can't outwit biology. Sleep studies confirm what monks knew instinctively: fractured rest fries your brain like a Cliniac candle. That gentle chime alarm you downloaded? It's the water clock of your era, promising serenity but delivering existential dread. You've tried everything: vibrating wristbands, alarm clocks that roll away, RIP, under the bed, even an app that donates to Nazis if you snooze. Wait, no, that last one got pulled from the store. Scholars debate whether alarms have liberated or enslaved us. Sure, you're not chained to Abbey bells, but your smartwatch pings for emails, steps, and mindfulness breaks. Brother Adelard's 20-year quest for the perfect gear ratio mirrors your nightly ritual of app updates and battery anxiety. The more precise time gets, the more it slips through your fingers like psalm dust. As you plug in your phone, consider this: the next alarm might be your soul's final vigils. Or it might just herald another day of meetings. Either way, somewhere in the digital ether, a monk's ghost whispers, should have used more candle. The dormitory's silence is unholy. No bells. No brothers shuffling. No rogue chickens clucking. Just the soft tick-tick-tick of the mechanical clock in the tower, its pendulum swaying like a monk in meditation. Dawn seeps through the shutters, but no one startles awake. The clock's gentle dong has already herded the monastery into prayer with the efficiency of a celestial sheepdog. Human alarm monks, once vital as air, now wander the cloister like ghosts of obsolescence. Brother Arnulf, formerly the abbey's most feared dawnshouter, has taken up knitting. Mechanical clocks didn't just change time, they murdered a job market. By the 14th century, monasteries across Europe retired their knockers, shouters, and water clock p-warmers. Mainstream fact: St. Albans Abbey's clock, built in 1320, could chime 24/7 without a single brother losing his voice. Quirky tidbit. Some ex-alarm monks became clock whisperers, hired to soothe townsfolk terrified of the new machines. Fear not, good sir, it won't bite. Probably. Historians still argue whether this shift improved monastic life or just swapped one tyranny for another. After all, you can't negotiate with a gear. You trace a finger over the clock's iron face, cold as a reliquary. The abbey's rhythm is smoother now, yes, but where's the drama? The frozen pipe fiascos? The candle-induced panic? Even the mice seem bored, no longer dodging sprinting brothers. The abbot claims this is progress, but you've seen him wistfully eyeing the old water clock bucket. Outside, the world's catching up. Village churches install clocks, their bells synced to the monasteries. Farmers plant by the hour, not the sun. Time, once a fluid thing, hardens into grid lines. Yet in the scriptorium, a scribe doodles a monk battling a clockwork dragon, a quiet protest against the new order. As you drift off during none, a habit that even gears can't break, the tick-tick-tick seeps into your dreams. No more water spills. No candle wax puddles. Just a relentless, perfect rhythm, ticking down to the end of an era. The monastery settles into a hush deeper than prayer. Moonlight pools in the cloister garden, silvering herbs once burned to mark the hours. The clock tower's shadow stretches long and thin, its gears resting between chimes. You linger at the dormitory window, watching breath fog the glass, a transient clock face, here then gone. Centuries unravel like parchment. That frantic knocker, sprinting icy halls, the scribe's ink-stained yawns. Adelard's workshop clatter, all softened now, smoothed into stories the stones murmur on windless nights. Time, once a foe to outwit, becomes a river you float upon, its currents gentle, inevitable. Somewhere, a smartphone dims. A watch glows. A child asks why clocks exist, and a parent hums, half remembering monks and stars. The tick-tick-tick follows you into the dark, no longer a demand, but a lullaby, proof that even time, in the end, rests. You exhale. The world holds its breath. And in the space between heartbeats, there's only this, quiet, endless, and kind. Sweet dreams.